Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something pretty cool today.
Oh, yeah.
NIO's new sub-brand.
Okay.
It's called Firefly,
Firefly.
and they've got this ambitious plan to really shake things up.
Hmm.
They're calling it a boutique little car.
Interesting.
So we're going to be looking at an analysis today by senior equity analyst Sheila Gates to really kind of unpack all this.
Okay.
But the big question that we're going to try to answer today is, can Firefly actually find success in a segment where even brands like MINI and Smart have struggled?
It's funny you should say that because that's a really interesting challenge.
Yeah,
The idea of a boutique car
right.
is almost a paradox.
What do you mean?
Well, you want the car to feel exclusive and special.
Right.
But to really find success, it needs to appeal to a much broader audience.
You're right. You're right. So when we say boutique car,
Right.
what are we even talking about?
Well, in the case of Firefly,
Yeah.
think like a Men Cooper-sized hatchback packed with smart technology,
Right.
aiming for a global launch starting in Europe.
Okay.
And they're really going for a more refined feel and a much higher price point than your average Chinese car.
Gotcha.
Sheila Gates's analysis suggests they're looking at somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 yuan.
Okay, so not exactly cheap.
Right.
But you mentioned this is launching in Europe.
Yes.
So does that mean they're going head-to-head with brands like MINI?
Absolutely. And that's where NIO's battery as a service or boss model could really shake things up.
Okay, so for those of us
Yeah.
who maybe aren't totally up to speed on all things NIO,
Sure.
can you break down BOSS and how it works here?
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, with Bus, you buy the car without the battery.
Okay.
You then just subscribe to a battery service, which means you can swap out your depleted battery for a fully charged one at any of NIO's swapping stations.
So it's kind of like getting gas, but for your electric car.
Exactly.
But how does that play into this whole boutique car thing? Isn't that maybe a little bit too practical for something that's supposed to feel exclusive?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Oh.
By separating the cost of the battery, NIO can potentially lower that initial purchase price of the Firefly,
Okay.
making it much more accessible. Now, Sheila Gates highlights that this could be a key differentiator,
Okay.
allowing them to position the Firefly strategically between the budget and boutique segments.
So you could get that premium feel without the luxury price tag.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
But doesn't that also kind of undermine the whole exclusivity thing?
It's a very delicate balance.
Yeah.
And Sheila Gates actually raises some interesting questions about this in her analysis.
Like what?
Well, for example, will Firefly owners even have access to all the perks that come with being a part of the NIO community? Like
Yeah.
access to their NIO houses?
Yeah, good point.
And could this strategy potentially even cannibalize their existing customer base with people opting for the smaller, more affordable Firefly instead of a full-fledged NIO model?
It seems like they're walking a pretty fine line here.
Yeah.
Trying to appeal to a wider market while still maintaining that image of offering something special.
Absolutely. And to really understand how tricky this can be, it's actually worth looking at what's happened with other players in this space,
Okay.
like MII and Smart.
Yeah, those brands immediately come to mind when you think about those small, stylish city cars.
Right.
But have they really struggled?
Well, they are iconic,
Yeah.
but if you look at their sales figures,
Right.
they tell a very different story.
Interesting.
MINI and Smart often struggle to achieve high sales volumes precisely because their premium pricing limits the appeal.
So even with that cool factor
Right.
and the backing of big names like BMW and Mercedes,
Yeah.
they haven't quite figured it out.
Not entirely, and we've even seen some evidence of this recently.
Oh, yeah.
With the electric Mini Cooper announcing a significant price cut,
Really?
slashing prices by as much as 65,000 yuan in some cases.
Wow, that's a pretty
Yeah.
big drop.
It is.
It seems like even the major players are having to adjust to the realities of this market.
They are, and it really highlights the challenges of creating a car that people both desire and can afford.
Yeah.
So the big question for Firefly is, can they learn from these challenges and find that sweet spot between exclusivity and accessibility?
Yes.
That balance between those two things,
Yeah.
desire,
Right? And affordability.
Affordability.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, what's the secret to making that work?
Right.
How do you create a car that feels special
Right.
without pricing yourself out of the market?
Well, Sheila Gates suggests that NIO's existing strengths, could actually be a major advantage.
Mm.
She specifically points to their strategy of selling Firefly through their existing NIO stores.
Oh, so instead of creating a whole separate brand experience,
Yeah.
they're just going to integrate it into what they already have going on.
Think about it. They've already
Yeah.
got this dedicated community of NIO owners.
Well-
A lot of those owners might be looking for a second, smaller car
Yeah.
for city driving, or
Makes sense.
maybe for a younger driver in the family.
Right, so they're tapping into a market that already knows the NIO brand.
Exactly, and they already trust it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
But wouldn't that make it harder to position Firefly as something different?
Well, that's where the design and the marketing will come in.
Okay.
But it also goes back to that whole best strategy we talked about.
Right.
By potentially offering that lower upfront price,
Yeah.
it creates a clear distinction between the Firefly and their main NIO models.
So almost like a stepping stone into the NIO ecosystem.
Yeah, think of it like that.
Someone could start with a Firefly, get the experience of the battery swapping and all the perks of the NIO community,
Right.
and then maybe later on upgrade to a larger NIO model.
Exactly. A very strategic approach.
Yeah,
Could be a win-win for everybody.
it could. But as with any kind of bold strategy, there are some potential pitfalls.
Oh, of course.
So it could go wrong.
Well, Sheila Gates highlights a few challenges
Okay.
based on NIO's experience with their other sub-brand Onvo.
Onvo. Yeah, I remember reading their sales haven't exactly been stellar.
Yeah, their L60 model only managed to sell about 4,300 units in its first full month on the market.
Wow, that's a far cry from what they were projecting.
Yeah, it is.
So what happened? Why did Onvo struggle?
Sheila Gates points to a few different factors. First, their pricing strategy seemed to miss the mark.
In what way?
Well, they were trying to compete directly with brands like Tesla and Xiaomi,
Okay.
but their L60s just didn't offer a compelling enough value proposition at that price point.
So almost like they were trying to punch above their weight a little bit.
Yeah, you could say that. And
Right.
then there's the fact that the battery swap model,
Right.
while it is innovative, it just hasn't seen widespread adoption yet.
Yeah, I could see that.
Some consumers are still hesitant
Makes sense.
about the whole idea of a battery subscription.
Right. It is a different way of thinking about car ownership.
It is. And then on top of that, ONVO also had some production challenges,
Oh, really?
which led to some delays and some pretty frustrating order backlogs.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then you can't forget just how competitive the EV market is right now.
Oh, absolutely.
New players are popping up constantly.
Yeah.
It's tough to stand out.
So bringing it back to Firefly,
Yeah.
what are the lessons that NIO can take away from ONVO's experience?
Well, there are a few really crucial takeaways here.
Okay.
First, NIO absolutely has to get the pricing right for Firefly.
Makes sense.
They need to find that sweet spot
Mhm.
where it feels aspirational,
Yeah.
desirable,
Right.
but still attainable
Right.
for a wide audience.
Okay.
They also really need to do a better job of communicating the benefits of that battery swap model.
Yeah.
Really addressing those consumer concerns.
Right.
Highlighting that value proposition.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about how you sell it to the consumer.
Exactly. You need to make them understand why it's a good thing. And then finally, they absolutely cannot afford any production delays with Firefly.
Yeah, I bet.
If they really want to capture that market share,
Uh-huh.
they need to be able to deliver those cars quickly and efficiently.
So it seems like NIO has a lot riding on this.
They do.
They're trying to find that balance between appealing to a wider audience,
Yeah.
but also maintaining that sense of exclusivity,
Yeah.
and they have to learn from those missteps with ONVO.
Right.
Think they can pull it off.
Well, Sheila Gates seems cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
In her analysis, she points out that Firefly might actually offer a fresh perspective
Okay.
in this really challenging boutique car market.
You mentioned earlier that they really need to nail the pricing.
Yes.
What did Sheila Gates have to say about that?
Well, she believes that the bias integration could really be key here. It could potentially allow NIO to price the Firefly very competitively,
Okay.
undercutting rivals like MII and Smart
Yeah.
without sacrificing that premium image.
So best of both worlds.
Potentially, yeah. But it really all comes down to execution.
Of course.
They need to nail the designs,
Right.
the technology, and the marketing.
Right, and get those cars out there on the road.
Exactly.
So for our listeners out there,
Yeah.
if someone's thinking about getting a small, stylish EV,
Right.
should they have Firefly on their radar?
Well, if you like the idea of a car that combines really cutting-edge technology
Yeah.
with that unique,
Mhm.
almost boutique feel,
Right.
then yeah, Firefly is definitely worth watching.
Okay.
But keep in mind, this is still a developing story.
Yeah.
NIO has a lot riding on this.
Yeah.
There are bound to be some bumps along the way.
It does feel like we're kind of on the edge of our seats.
A little bit, yeah.
Waiting to see how this plays out.
Right.
Guess that's part of the excitement of being in on something new, right?
Exactly. And the bigger question here, the one that Sheila Gates kind of leaves us with, is can NIO really crack the code of the boutique car market?
Can they create a car that feels exclusive, aspirational, but also achieve that mainstream success?
Right.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there you have it. A deep dive into NIO's Firefly and the challenges of building a boutique car that everyone can afford. We want to hear from you.
Yes.
Do you think NIO can succeed where others have failed?
Right. What do you think?
Let us know in the comments, and until next time, keep diving deep.